Channel Sports Central, we go over our next team prediction of this offseason. And it's going to be over the Boston College Eagles, a team that was 6-5 overall in the 2020 season. And this is a Boston College team last season that was extremely overlooked, I'd say, in the ACC, as they were extremely overshadowed by Notre Dame and Clemson. But this is a team that was playing it very close to a lot of good teams, and at the same time, they were getting some good wins as well last season. So Boston College, of course, going into 2021, I also think is pretty underrated, and why that is what we go over here today. We're going to get started with Boston College's final prediction. We'll be looking at your season trends from 2020 to get things started here today, looking back at how this team was last season and also where they're going heading into 2021. Once again, 6-5 was your overall record, 3-2 in your first 5 games, 3-3 in the last 6. And once again, this team played very well against a lot of good teams. Like they blew out Georgia Tech. Obviously, Georgia Tech was not very good last season, but still, they won that game significantly, 48-27. Kept it within 6 on the road against Clemson. That was definitely a notable game from last season, even though it was a loss. I mean, you kept it within 6 against an outstanding Clemson team that went far last season. 20-34 was the final score there. I mean, they could have caused chaos. This team could have caused basically an uprising in the ACC had they have beaten Clemson in that matchup. But in the end, Clemson still fought Boston College off and got the win, especially with it being on the road. Very impressive performance there by Boston College, keeping it as close as they did. Beat Syracuse there 16-13 and also beat Louisville 34-27. So once again, not a bad season for Boston College. Looking into 2021, here's your roster preview going to next season. And of course, you got Phil Jurkovec coming back. He was a great quarterback last season. Once again, this team was very overlooked in many ways. Phil Jurkovec was a huge part of that. He had a great season, 2,500 yards, 17 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and a 61% completion rate last season. So overall, he was decently accurate, good touchdown interception ratio there, and his yardage was also pretty good. So I'd say he's definitely a top half quarterback in the ACC heading into next season. And I definitely think that going in for Boston College, I think he's definitely going to be a huge impact player going into next season. Top running back David Bailey is transferring to Colorado State, so he will not be back for next season. That is an unfortunate loss there. He put up just right over 560 yards last season and 8 touchdowns. So he scored all of the touchdowns for the running backs last season for the most part. Travis Levy is going to be back. He did put up 600 yards, didn't have a touchdown last season, but he did have a decent amount of yardage for this team. So this Eagle team will be just fine, I think, with Travis Levy. I like him quite a bit. But David Bailey, that will be a tough loss there. I mean, it would have been great if this team could have kept David Bailey as well, but that's not how it goes with the transfer portal. So, but of course, you got Alex Sinkfield also coming in from West Virginia, from the Big 12 there, and kind of an interesting transfer in with Alex Sinkfield. He did not perform very much for West Virginia last season, but he's definitely a name to watch out for going into next season. Zay Flowers, your top receivers, coming back. He put up just over 900 yards and 10 touchdowns last season, so he had a huge season for this Boston College team. He's going to be a huge weapon for Phil Jurkovec. You also got Lewis and Gill coming back. That's going to be huge. C.J. Lewis and then Jalen Gill both will be back for this team next season. C.J. Lewis put up just over 400 yards. Same thing for Jalen Gill. They both had pretty similar stats. They do lose their tight end, Hunter Long. He put up just over 680 yards last season, 5 touchdowns. He's a huge player for this team. I mean, that's a lot of yardage for a tight end, so that's going to be a tough loss there. You also lose 2 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and so overall, this team looks pretty good offensively. I mean, offensively, I do not have a single concern. But if you look at the defensive side, you do lose 5 starters from last season, and the linebacking core especially is taking a hit. So I'm a little bit concerned about the defensive side, but once again, offensively, this team looks great. Chances of a bowl game are pretty good for this team. I'd be very surprised if Boston College did not go to a bowl game next year. In fact, I think this team is definitely capable of 6 to 8, maybe even 9 wins. I mean, we could see a 9-win season out of Boston College, and I wouldn't be too surprised. So expect a good season coming up here for this team. How high could this team get, though? I mean, once again, 6 to 9 wins, I think is pretty. Even 7 to 9, I think, is a pretty good range for this Boston College team going into next season. But the schedule side of things, I mean, it's going to be a little bit tougher. You got Clemson, of course, on the road. You got Missouri. Don't forget about them. That's one of your non-conference games. Otherwise, your non-conference games are pretty easy. I mean, you got Colgate, UMass, and Temple, all 3 which are very winnable games. Then, of course, you got Virginia Tech. You got Louisville on the road. Florida State at home. Don't sleep on them. NC State as well. So you do have a moderately tough ACC schedule, and you also got to mix in Missouri, which Missouri could be a potential good team as well. So, but looking at your September here, you got Colgate, UMass, Temple, and Missouri. All 4 of your non-conference games. You're going to win 3 of them. You beat Colgate, UMass, and Temple very easily. Thing is, you do have UMass and Temple on the road, so that's going to be a big thing, is do not mess up against one of those teams that you definitely should be beating on the road there. Road matchups can be tricky sometimes. So, but I do expect you to start off the season 3-0 pretty easily. Then you got Missouri on the 25th. That's going to be a loss. I like Missouri actually next season quite a bit. They're looking pretty good, especially on the offensive side of things. So I'm going to go with Missouri to get the win there. You'll be 3-1 heading into October. October is a tough month for you, the toughest month of action this upcoming season. And I think you end up losing 2. You lose to Clemson. That's a road game. You played pretty well against them last season on the road, but not this year. I think Clemson does get the win there. But it could be close. Who knows? Boston College has fared pretty well against Clemson in the past few years. Then you got NC State, of course. That's going to be a close one, but you get the win. Big win there against NC State. That'll be a very good Wolfpack team next season. So you get the win there. You will lose to Louisville the next week, though. That's a road game, and I went back and forth on that one a lot. That's pretty much a 50-50 matchup there, but I'm going to give it to Louisville to get the win there. Syracuse then on the road. Syracuse is not a very good team. They're not going to be in a bowl game next season, just to tell you that. But with it being on the road, who knows? It could be a trickier one. I'm going to say it's close, but I think Boston College does get the win there, potentially by a touchdown or 2. So you're going to be 5-3 heading into the month of November. Not a bad situation. All you need is 1 win to get to a bowl game, which is definitely one of the main priorities for this team going into next season. And I think you do so pretty easily. I think Virginia Tech, that's going to be a loss. Once again, with it being at home, it could be a very close one, but I'm going to give it to Virginia Tech there. Georgia Tech, on the flip side, is not a very good team. With it being on the road, I'm going to keep it as a close win, but I do think you get the win. Florida State is a very interesting team next season. Mackenzie Milton going in. That team, I could see Florida State potentially being an 8-win team next year, potentially even 9. So this will be a pretty good season coming up here for Florida State, especially if Mackenzie Milton plays well. I'm going to give Florida State the advantage there. They're going to get the win, but in a very close game. Then you got Wake Forest at home to finish out this season. You're going to get an easy win there, and you're going to proceed on to 7-5 for your record next season, which 7-5 is not a shabby record for Boston College next year. Once again, I think this team is very capable of even potentially 8 or 9 wins. Like if you beat, say, Louisville and you pull out a huge win against Missouri at home, that gives you 9 wins, which is definitely a big possibility, I think, for Boston College next season. This is a team that I think could cause some big trouble in the ACC against some of the better teams. Clemson, of course, is a big one there. I don't think you're going to beat Clemson, but who knows? You could possibly put Clemson on an upset alert there. It wouldn't surprise me if that were to be the case. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Boston College. I appreciate you guys all watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you later.